We had a lovely chat with on Monday and kind of got a good initial synopsis of the situation. We don't really have all of the facts yet, but we also didn't want to come into this meeting more just having a verbal chat, so we thought we'd prepare some stuff for you all. At least you can see how our brain works in terms of strategic thinking. And in this call, we wanted to essentially just get your feedback. We also wanted to share some previous examples of campaigns that we've run for clients that have never done paid before. Might be helpful to visualize some of the stuff that we've put in our proposal deck. And then we've got a couple of other things just to kind of help you see kind of what we're about. But before we get into any of that, I would love to just get a sense from you guys as far as like whether our we call it the mini proposal was kind of somewhat on par with what you were thinking in terms of paid strategy, or were we completely off the mark? Did any
But
of
I
the
do,
scenarios resonate better than like we had three semi-real hypotheticals, I guess? Whether any that jumped out?
yeah, I mean, this is really, we definitely, I love that we're attacking all of the Meta, LinkedIn, and Google platforms. The pilot campaign, I think, is great. I think we've earned enough attention, like y'all had said. I think that there's a lot further we can go as far as that goes, but I think that's a good way to kind of bring it in, with the short form content and the customer
Mhm.
success stories. I like those.
Cool.
We would just have to kind of go about figuring out with our clients how we can kind of tell those stories visually.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure from a paid side what I guess some of the best practices are, as far as are you always gonna get more, views, clicks, things like that on video? Or is it, I need y'all to kind of
Yeah, yeah,
explain
yeah.
those little things to me,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
nuances.
Yeah. What I would say, and Lauren, design, social, Lauren, feel free to jump in too. I think, firstly, every campaign, every industry works differently, right? Every persona treats things differently as
Yeah.
well with respect to the type of media that they see. But nonetheless, what we have found at the very least, running campaigns for clients across a wide array of industries, video ads generally tend to work best for top and middle of the funnel, because that's when you're trying to pique the intrigue, where perhaps people may lend you more of their attention. But with conversion decision stage, as we found that static ads generally tend to work better, because at that point you've already kind of primed them with your video content in the other funnels. So when they get to the decision stage, they're like, all right, I don't need to see a 60-second video about your product. Tell me what I need to do and tell me quickly, type of thing. So we found static ads again. We put more of an emphasis there, but social Lauren, normally her process is before we get going with any ad, she normally will tell us, okay guys, design team, I need X number of ads for top of the funnel, X number of ads for middle, and X number of ads for decision. And normally Lauren will break out for us three static, two video, two static, one video, so on and so forth. So we kind of get the guideline. I use this analogy a lot at our creative agency, which is the conveyor belt analogy. And it all kind of starts with social Lauren and myself in terms of figuring out what is the broad strategy in the way that we want to go after paid media. We're really big on the strategy side of things because a lot of the people, when they want to get going, right? Because the quicker you get going, the quicker money comes through the door. But what happens when you don't do strategy? You basically throw a bunch of money at the wall and you pray that it hits the mark somewhere. And the chances are it's not going to hit the mark anywhere because we haven't really taken time to go through all of the other stuff. So normally we'd figure out at the top, what are we actually doing? And then from there, we would figure out, okay, we've got four strong markets. Which one or two of these do we want to start with? We do not recommend going like just crazy and going after all four or five at the same time. We are really huge on testing, not assuming. Don't assume anything, test everything is our general motto. And what we would do is we'd figure out, all right, we've got these four strong markets. We don't know right now because we haven't run paid media against them, but which do we feel hopeful about that would be a good starting place? Then we pick one to two. Once we got the one to two, after that, we would split them into sub persona categories so that we can create individualized messaging for each of those. And then once we do that, and we've got the broad messaging, the campaign strategy down. After that, Social Lauren begins to kind of ideate a little bit in terms of the campaign structure, minimum number of ads required at each funnel, and then simultaneously our design team, which is Lauren and Amelia, they essentially head up the creative side, and we have also a pretty systematic process on as it relates to creative strategy, where we everything starts from research, seeing what is working well in the market. Again,
Yeah.
people have this weird misconception that, oh my god, we got to do the most wackiest creative things as it relates to paid media. Then you're just taking a big old punt and hoping that it works. We have a different philosophy, which is we should scour to see what is currently working within the marketplace. Not to say we're going to do a copycat, but from that we can also gauge. All right, video ads seem to be generating far more engagement than static ads, which would then suggest we should do more video ads and we should maybe structure them in this type of way. So we kind of use the marketplace research to inform our, I guess, philosophy towards how we approach ads, and then Design Lauren and Amelia would then basically do a full deep dive in terms of, okay, the creative should look like real people in motion. The types of shots we should get is more like these types of shots. We also do video production as well as the deployment of the ad, so we understand how to shoot things as well as how to deploy things. I would say
Mhm.
that's probably one of our differentiators, if you want to call it that, because most people, they either shoot or they deploy ads. You don't normally get shooters that also do the paid media strategy side of things. So that's generally how we approach it. And then what, after we have all of this, call it the house structure down, Social Lauren would then create a very sophisticated Excel blocking chart, which would show exactly how the money would be deployed before it gets deployed, along with estimated metrics and KPIs associated with each thing. So that way, obviously, these are all based on reasonable assumptions that we get through the ad platforms. We're never going to know until we know, but the purpose of this is for at least to set some broad benchmarks before we actually spend the money. And then if you guys are like, like we just, for instance, we just presented a blocking chart to one of our clients on Monday, and he was like, "This looks good." He's like, "The ad spend is a little bit slightly higher than what I would like. Can we taper that back a little bit?" So then Lauren will go back to the blocking chart, taper back the ad spend, and then subsequently adjust the blocking chart metrics. And then once we have all of that down, we then go into pre-production mode, which is shooting the ads. And again, we have a very systematic process the way that we do that too. You got your hand up, so feel free to shoot.
So like scenario one, I see these the tactics. Would we be running ads on all of the social platforms, all of Google, and then we like try to figure out what, because like we haven't ran ads for 4 or 5 years, and that was on the very, very low level.
Mhm,
So like we really don't know what we don't know.
mhm, mhm,
So like how would that look, because there's so many social platforms, so many social, avenues that we can go. And then there's Google, like, do we use all of them, or is it more of like what works best?
mhm. Lauren, do you fancy taking that one?
Yeah, sure. Nice to meet you too. I it's best to be in as many places as possible if you are getting the conversions that you want. You'll work out based on the audience that you're trying to target. One platform may work better than the other. If you don't have very much history or historical data with any of the platforms,
Yeah.
it's always a good shot to try. As you said, you don't know what you don't know, but typically, if you're going to go after B2B market, those are the main platforms that I would suggest. We would definitely take a more staggered approach when it comes to deploying any kind of ads. And it's partly my job to assess while we're live and this goes back to the blocking chart as well, we don't ever set a campaign and just let it run. And then at the end, you see how well it did, how much it spent, what, impressions and conversions you got. It's a iterative process of like readjusting budget, and reallocating the budget based on your top performers and your lower performers. And sometimes if that means switching off the campaign to reallocate that money into a campaign that is doing really well, then that's what we would do to optimize a campaign. And then from that, you get your insights and you'll be able to see, LinkedIn performed a lot better than Google. Do we want to continue with search campaigns, or do we want to switch on a PMAX campaign next time? And you kind of iterate and find your sweet spot as you continue to run campaigns. But generally speaking, I go for a multi-attribution model. So we would typically have at least 2 platforms running at the same time.
Gotcha.
I'd say a big also contingency is, of course, the total amount of ad spend that you also want to deploy.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Right. If you're not starting with a lot off the jump, you certainly don't want to be diluting that across 4 or 5 different platforms.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
100%.
And then from like the creative process, and you all kind of touched on it briefly. So like, do we send like all of our media assets for you to kind of play with, or how does that whole process work from like our end to your end?
I got you. Yeah. I can show you, Brandon, better than I can tell you, but I will nonetheless kind of just briefly give the one-liner. We can do it whichever way you want. We can either work with your current assets, or we also handle full production shoots on behalf of our clients. If they're like we got a fitness app client, and they're like, we don't really want to do any of the production, so we want you to come in, shoot the ads, do the post-production, editing, all of that. And then we've got another client. We're about to launch a campaign for them in about 2 weeks. We're starting off with a soft launch for them. They already have existing media assets. So with them, what we've said is, all right, you can kick over your existing media assets over to us as long as you've got the raw source file. And then our design team can basically get them market ready, adding all the motion graphics, things like that. And then we're going to do a Black Friday thing for them where we're going to go out and basically handle more the fuller production. So long story short, it can be whatever way you want it to be. We're pretty flexible. We do like to, we're very involved, whichever way we do it, we're very involved in terms of the assets that we want, so that we would kind of give you more the broad guidance in terms of, all right, guys, we're thinking, all right, we're going after these personas. Makes sense that we're going to go with this type of messaging. Everybody in agreement? Yay. Okay, yeah, good. Okay, so if we're in agreement, that means that we're going to go with this angle. Therefore, the ad creatives that we get should be more resembled around X. And then normally Social Alarm would tell us again the breakdown of static to video. You may not have video, because video sometimes can be a little bit challenging. We can of course run with static ads, but it's always nice, especially when we're starting off, to test with different types of creative.
You've started to learn a little bit about our business. I would say video is important, obviously, because we're in the entertainment field, and fortunately we have a huge cache of stuff to be able to share, and we also have the in-house assets to be able to share to you. Given what you've heard so far, and given the approach that you've suggested with this phased area, what is too light of a budget to get involved with, or what is the smart first budget given the amount of allocation that you think you need to properly A/B test this?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ari. I've got some broad thoughts, you could say, around that I've actually prepared here, because I suspected you were going to ask me that question, actually. So it really, I would say, kind of broadly speaking, it depends on the angle that we go, right? If we go with the pilot, aka scenario 1, we can start off with a smaller budget, because that assumes that we've already got warm leads in the system. All of these, please treat them as true estimates and not finals. But let's say we go with the pilot campaign. Let's a monthly ad spend of 2 to 3K would be a good starting budget to test against the warm leads. If we go after the warm leads plus the new leads, aka scenario 1 and scenario 2, we would suggest probably doubling that. The range would be somewhere between 3 to 6K. This is just purely an ad spend, right? So the 3 to 6K, we would probably allocate more of an overweighting towards of course, the new leads, so that way we can maximize awareness. And then if we go for the hybrid full funnel campaign, which is essentially all three of the scenarios in totality, that would probably be more of like a 5 to 10K ad spend.
Right.
That's kind of more ad spend wise. I'm happy to give you also broad estimates, kind of as far as what our management fee would be as well on those, if
Yep.
you would like. But
Yeah, I want that. I'll want that afterwards, but
sure,
it just helps
no
me to
problem.
get an idea around where your strategy
Yeah.
is from a dollar amount. And I would presume, you know, maybe not in the first couple of weeks or even perhaps in the first couple of months, but Lauren, as you continue to see the iterative process work itself out and say, hey, we're hitting on something clearly hot right here,
Yeah.
and we need the money to be able to double down and lean
Mhm.
in, you would come up with continued strategy adjustments and financial adjustments to allow us to hit that mark, right?
Yes, exactly that. And the other thing, while you don't really have any historical benchmarks, as we run through our first set of campaigns, I'll be able to get a clearer idea of, if you spend this amount of money, you're going to get this outcome. And we can work on like an outcome-based goal, and then be able to work out how much that will cost you.